Hi, I'm Ronnie Hopper, Precinct 5 Director of the High Plains Water District in Lubbock, Texas. I live on a farm located 4 miles north of Petersburg, Texas. A path forward for sustainable crop production on the Texas High Plains. Thank you for the opportunity to share my thoughts concerning the future of crop production on the High Plains of Texas. It's no secret that irrigated agriculture has been using the lion's share of water pumped from the Ogallala Aquifer over the past 75 years. High Plains producers have a great story to share. The good news is that producers are using the best technology available to achieve the greatest efficiencies. In fact, the amount of water required to produce 1 pound of cotton when I began farming in 1969 now produces 3 pounds of cotton. Things change in our everyday lives, though. Even if we refuse to change, things about us around us change, thus changing our lives. The COVID pandemic has taught us valuable lessons. Number one, no one stands toe-to-toe with Mother Nature. Number two, food doesn't originate at the grocery store. And number three, we shouldn't depend on other nations for our food, fuel, fiber, and many other essentials. There's a fourth thing that I've learned, and that's how to wear a mask in public. Obviously, I'm not wearing a mask presently, but I do have a photo of me wearing my mask. Okay, all joking aside, on the High Plains today, there's a lot being said about sustainability. How can we continue to produce crops knowing we will have less irrigation capacity in the coming years? I believe the answer lies largely on improved soil health and regenerative agriculture. To endure, we will depend less on pumping from the aquifer and more from our annual rainfall. I don't believe this area will return to a short grass prairie as it was in the 1880s. Our soils will hold an average of 9 inches of moisture. Our rainfall average is 18 inches per year. That is 2 full soil profiles per year. An oversimplification perhaps, but the goal is to manage our soils in a manner which increases the water infiltration rate, whether it be rainfall or irrigation. In order to fully understand High Plains agriculture, we need to understand 3 things. Number 1, where we came from. Number 2, where are we today? And number 3, where are we likely to go in the future? Over the years, I've asked a number of people, what do you think West Texas agriculture will become 5 and 10 years into the future? The overwhelming answer was, I'm so busy with today, I don't have the luxury of time to look ahead. This is a dangerous attitude. Let's look at where we came from. Spanish conquistador Francisco Coronado, the first European to cross this sea of grass in 1541, described it as follows. I reached some plains so vast that I did not find their limit anywhere I went, although I traveled over them for more than 300 leagues, 900 miles, with no more landmarks than if we had been swallowed up by the sea. There was not a stone, not a bit of rising ground, nor a tree, nor a shrub, not anything to go by. In 1852, an expedition led by Army General Randolph Marcy reported the following: not a tree, shrub, or any other herbage to intercept the vision. The almost total absence of water causes all animals to shun it, Even the Indians do not venture to cross it except at 2 or 3 places. The Great Sahara of North America, it is a region almost as vast and trackless as the ocean, a land where no man, either savage or civilized, permanently abides, a treeless, desolate waste of uninhabitable solitude, which always has been and must continue uninhabited forever. The High Plains was once a short grass prairie with very little surface water, sparse spring water, and very little rainfall. The few inhabitants depended on these and the water collected in the vast number of playa lakes and buffalo wallows of the land. Before 1875, buffalo hunters and native Indians were the primary inhabitants of the area. The federal census of 1880 counted 1,607 persons in the Panhandle. In the next 20 years, population grew with cattlemen and sheep ranchers moving to the area. My home county, Hale County, was created in 1876, and the first settler came in 1886. In the decade of the 1890s, farmers moved to the area and began dryland crop production. The first well in Hale County was drilled in 1914. In the 1920s, irrigation technology opened the way for irrigated agriculture. By 1930, a total of 41 wells had been drilled in the area, and by 1940, the number increased to more than 700. With higher commodity prices after World War II and the drought of record of the 1950s, irrigated agriculture came into its own in the decade of the 1950s. Where are we today? This is an aerial photo of center pivot irrigation systems on top of the Texas caprock. Observe the circles and the meanders of the caprock at the center of the screen. Agriculture has made great strides in recent years. The increase comes from enhanced plant breeding, improved cultural practices, GPS implement guidance, advanced weed and pest control, smartphone applications, soil monitor systems, ET technology, satellite imagery, and drones. The example I gave you about the 3 pounds of cotton being produced with the same amount of water required to produce 1 pound 40 years ago is largely due to plant breeding, cultural practices, weed and pest control. This is a photo of a high horsepower tractor equipped with GPS guidance with sub-inch accuracy. The planter is 60 foot in width and has the ability to fold to 14-foot width for transport. Each planter unit has the ability not only to deliver seed, but to also deliver 2 liquid products in furrow, products of our choosing. A monitor located in the tractor cab registers a number of performance functions. The newest center pivot switch panels have a host of features. From a smartphone, laptop, or PC, you can start or stop a pivot and its irrigation wells. You can program the unit to do a number of functions. You can receive a text or email when something is wrong with the system. You can program for various variable rate irrigations. You can integrate the system with other devices. Most center pivot systems on the High Plains are either 8-tower systems covering 120 acres or 16-tower systems covering 480 acres. This is a photo of a 25-tower system, which is 3/4 of a mile in length, covering 720 acres. This is a photo of a subsurface drip system. The foreground shows the 4 manifolds connected to the irrigation plots in the field. On the left is a storage tank used to inject various materials into the water system. Technology comes at a cost. According to my local banker, the average farmer in my home county spends $1,250,000 during a crop year. For an average dairy farmer, the amount is $10 million. As I said in the beginning, I believe the future belongs to soil health and regenerative agriculture. So where do we go from here? I believe we'll have a new generation of younger producers, fewer in number. There will be greater attention given to regenerative soil health, greater attention to conserving rainfall, greater attention to improving the percent soil organic matter, reducing compaction from larger farm equipment, returning to crop rotation, including in the inclusion of cover crops and looking for a winter perennial, summer fallow, livestock integration, and remember that not every acre is going to be placed in a summer crop, and most especially more attention given to reducing input cost. I want to give you an example of regenerative agriculture on my home farm. And I remind you, as you look at these photos, it doesn't always work this well. My son and I are no-till farmers. That means we don't plow or disturb the soil any more than we have to. No-till farming, simply stated, is the current crop is planted into the residue of the preceding crop. We do not bed the field into rows. On this particular year, we lost our spring crop to a hailstorm, so the land was left fallow through the summer. In August, we received a large amount of rainfall. We seeded a mixture of seeds designed to increase the fertility of the soil and the percentage of organic matter in the soil. The vegetation was killed by the November frost, leaving the vegetation to decompose during the winter and spring months. This photo shows the emerging cotton plants as they push through the residue. Once emergence occurs, the more residue in the field, the better. It serves to shade the soil, thereby reducing evaporation. It also slows rainfall and irrigation water movement. Here's an overhead photo of the seed row. The residue acts in much the same way as the mulch is used in our flower beds and gardens. The soil temps under the mulch are often 15 to 20 degrees cooler than bare soil at this time of the year. This is a blessing and a curse. The curse is cooler soil temperature at planting time, slowing seed germination. The blessing occurs after seeding emergence in conserving moisture and reducing soil temperature. This photo shows mid-season cotton growing with the benefit of the mulch residue. I wish I could tell you the results are always like this photo. Believe me, there are not. There are many failures in breaking new ground in agriculture. Years ago, the majority of farmers integrated livestock on their farms: cattle, sheep, pigs, chickens. Then there was a period when livestock were absent for the most part. I believe we will return to livestock integration in the coming years. Several years ago, my son and I held on-farm field days during the month of August for a period of 4 years. We had support from the NRCS, the High Plains Water District, North Plains Water District, Texas Tech, Texas Soil and Water Conservation Districts, Texas A&M, and Cotton Incorporated, among others. From that effort, a 501c3 entity was created and named Notill Texas. We host annual events alternating between Lubbock and Amarillo. There's much to be said about soil health and regenerative agriculture. Throughout history, nations have risen and fallen over time according to how they treat their soils. Many historians believe that the Roman Empire fell in part because of the decline in their ability to feed its people. Rome occupied Egypt, for its fertile lands were greater than the homeland. Failure to care for the soil destroys our ability to provide food for life. Lacking fertilization causes imbalance of soil nutrients. Burning of biomass instead of converting it into manure results in depletion of organic matter. Failing to rotate crops limits the ecosystem of the soil. Cultivating fragile soils causes erosion and destroys soil structure. I want to say something about global warming and carbon sequestration. There's a scientific belief the Earth is warming and it's caused by human activity. Scientists believe it is the burning of fossil fuels in our combustion engines, the use of coal and natural gas in our power generation plants, coupled with deforestation of the Earth and other factors, raising the CO2 levels in our atmosphere. Science says since the Industrial Revolution period, beginning in 1890 to 1900, global temps have increased 2 degrees Fahrenheit over the 130-year industrial period, and it's only going to get worse. This graph shows the average temperature change over the period from 1850 to the present. However, over the past 25 years, the issue of global warming has become political. Now we are hearing about carbon credits, increased taxation, and a host of other things. The issue has come to the point it generates more heat than light. Believe what you will concerning global warming, the point is this. We should each strive to leave the least footprint upon the earth as possible. We should strive to leave the earth in as good or better condition as we found it. In other words, we should each do our part. Scientists believe soils have a role to play in drawing down carbon. Let's take a moment and look at carbon sequestration. We're familiar with the term, but do we understand the fundamentals of carbon sequestration? Plants remove CO2 from the atmosphere through photosynthesis. Plants store carbon. Carbon is then stored in the soil and the oxygen molecule is returned to the atmosphere. Please note, when you plow the soil or turn it over, the soil carbon can be released back into the atmosphere, hence the need for minimum tillage or no-till. Carbon sequestration in the agriculture sector refers to the capacity of agricultural lands and forests to remove carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. Carbon dioxide is absorbed by trees, plants, and crops through photosynthesis and stored as carbon in biomass, the foliage, stems, roots, and soils. Grasslands are referred to as carbon sinks, because they can store large amounts of carbon in their vegetation and root systems. The ability of agricultural lands to store or sequester carbon depends on many factors. We are dealing with an ecosystem of the soil under the soil surface. Remember, the ecosystem is dynamic as opposed to being static. Ecosystems are influenced by the temperature, annual rainfall, soil type, wind, relative humidity, nutrient availability, soil stress of fungi and bacteria. In the summer of 2018, my son and I hosted 3 videographers from the Smithsonian Institution in Washington, D.C. Over the next 3 days, they created the following video, which is now being shown at the museum.
Flying over West Texas, you see circles and squares, fields defined by county roads and by pivot irrigation. And this is really a microcosm of what we see across the entire planet. We humans have left our footprint on the globe through agriculture. We've turned forests into fields, dug up and tilled the soil, all to feed almost 7.5 billion people.
My granddad came to this farm in 1941. He was a sharecropper. My dad was born here, grew up on the farm. I was born here, grew up on the farm. A lot of the conventional systems that we've developed in agriculture and relied on for many, many years don't resemble natural systems at all. You're never going to walk out in nature and see 52,000 cotton plants on an acre. It's just not going to happen. And when you do that, there's a lot of problems.
What we do in West Texas is, majority of it is conventional tillage. The reason why conventional tillage came about was originally this was grassland prairie, and as the original settlers came in and started going into cultivation of crops, they were deep breaking and plowing out the prairie grasses. And so it's been always kind of one of those deals that was tradition. You know, that's why, you know, great granddaddy did it that way, granddaddy did it that way, daddy did it that way, I'm going to do it that way.
Across West Texas and the Great Plains, thousands of farmers like R.N. Hopper are turning away from old methods. They're embracing a new technique called no-till. They plant with minimal plowing and use cover crops and crop rotation to keep the fields fertile.
So we're standing here in a field of wheat straw that was combined just a couple of months ago. The year before that, this field was in cotton. You can see some cotton stalks right here. And the year before that, it was in corn. So you see a few corn cobs, a few pieces of stalks. What we're trying to do here is not disturb the soil any more than we have to.
Hopper is collaborating with a team of scientists from Texas Tech University to analyze the results of the no-till method.
So how long has this field been no-till?
It's been no-till for 10 years, and we've seen a lot of changes in those 10 years. Probably the first difference that we noticed was the return of the earthworms. When we were doing a lot of tillage, we didn't have earthworm population, because when you're tearing up somebody's house every few weeks or months, they have a hard time living.
No-till agriculture isn't a cure-all, but research is showing multiple benefits. The undisturbed soil has more nutrients and can store more water, and it is proving to be one way to absorb the increased carbon dioxide at the heart of climate change.
3, 2, 1, go. The problem that we're having is that there's just too much carbon in the atmosphere. And there are many solutions to remove some of the carbon from the atmosphere. And one of those solutions is actually maybe not as obvious to some, but is right below our feet. It's the soils.
There's a catchphrase nowadays that a lot of people talk about sustainability and how we want to have sustainable agriculture. But really, what we want is regenerative agriculture. We want to turn the needle back to the point that we're going the other direction in soil health. Soil is really the bridge that connects us to all of time, both forward and backward. We're truly made of soil, weathered rock fragments. We need those minerals for our bodies. The things that make up our bodies are as old as creation itself. And when we're gone, our bodies will decompose in the soil and they'll be used to build other things. And so truly, soil is what marries us to all of existence.